highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
18th century Botany was a popular leisure time destination. The attractions of Correy's Gardens and the Sir Joseph Banks Hotel secured such fame that it was said every visitor coming to Sydney should spend a day at Botany.
For more than 50 years, the Sir Joseph Banks Hotel was a destination for hundreds of holidaymakers. A two-storey Georgian building was built by Thomas Kellett and J. Drew in 1840. Originally known as the Banks Inn, it became the Sir Joseph Banks Hotel, named after the botanist on James Cook's expedition, which explored the east coast of Australia in 1770.
In December 1844, Thomas Kellett invited those who had not visited this delightful bay to do so. It was considered one of the healthiest spots in the colony for invalids, with sea bathing at the door. For young married honeymoon couples, the greatest attention was paid to their comfort.
William Beaumont and James Waller leased the hotel in 1846. The garden was the most extensive in the vicinity of Sydney. A riding school had been established and a bathing house built at the end of the long jetty, suitable bathing dresses being provided. A conservatory was constructed and a ballroom was in the course of erection. The zoological collection included an elephant, the only one ever landed on the shores of Australia. In November 1850, additions to the collection of animals were a magnificent Royal Bengal tiger, an Indian bear, and a curious sample of the monkey genus.
On Boxing Day 1853, a most novel and amusing exhibition of the docility of the elephant was promised, a well-known sporting gentleman having undertaken to ride the animal. 2 luncheon saloons were provided. Some individuals brought their own lunch. The proprietor deprecated this practice, which deprived him of his only chance of reimbursement.
On Boxing Day 1854, a German band was engaged for the occasion. Malcolm's amphitheatrical stud performed a variety of feats of horsemanship. There was dancing on the lawn and a menagerie of wild beasts was open to the public. A sumptuous collation was served in the rustic saloon. The Ben Bolt steam packet was hired for the conveyance of visitors who preferred a transmarine to an equestrian passage.
In August 1860, the Sydney Morning Herald held their 4th anniversary dinner at the Sir Joseph Banks Hotel. The party was conveyed to Botany in 4 omnibuses. On reaching the hotel, some rambled through the gardens. Others partook themselves to boating, while cricket, football, rounders, quoits and foot racing afforded recreation and amusement for the majority.
In 1862, Vickers Moyse leased the hotel and added more features: a cricket ground, bowling green and archery course.
John Frederick Maloney became proprietor in 1868, and with the assistance of energetic showman Tom King, set out to make it the leading sports ground of the metropolis. In front of the hotel, between the gardens and the road, a splendid piece of running ground was formed. The spot arranged so that spectators could witness the events from start to finish. A little distance away was the dancing saloon, or rather lawn, as level as a billiard table, and the band played in the centre. Through the grounds in every direction were shady nooks with seats for picnicking.
One holiday feature was to be a balloon ascent. On Boxing Day 1869, everybody went to see the balloon. 12 o'clock came, and so did several buses. 1 o'clock came, everyone thought it ought to be there. A small boy arrived and cried out, "The balloon's busted!" It was true. The balloon had burst in 2 places.
On Anniversary Day 1870, there were sports and astonishing novelties at Botany. The blowing up of a ship was a sight worth witnessing. The baby show had upwards of 30 babies entered. The splendid brass band of the Naval Brigade played at the Marquee. Mr. G. Brown of the Adelphi Theatre was MC for the dancers, and the orchestra of the Prince of Wales Theatre played selections of music.
The centenary of Cook's arrival at Botany Bay was celebrated on Easter Monday in April 1870. The main feature was the performance of the female blondin on a tightrope. The rope, 100 yards long, was stretched about 40 feet in the air above the lawn in front of the hotel. In order to guard against any accident occurring, several gentlemen held a bed quilt under the rope. Another event was the Great Roman Chariot Race, for which 3 chariots were entered. One of the horses bolted and the vehicle was injured, so there were only 2 starters. There was no opponent to Mr. J. Gibson in the champion clog dance. He danced several steps and was awarded first prize.
Frank Smith acquired the hotel in 1875. A single-storied addition with curved facade, veranda and steeply pitched hip roof replaced an earlier wing. A mammoth pavilion, 210 feet long and 81 feet wide, was built for dances and musical events. Constructed of wood and galvanized iron, it was artistically painted. The floor of Correy pine had an orchestra in the centre. On each side of the dancing area was a 12-foot wide strip for skating. A grand 2-storey Italianate-style building was erected north of the old hotel in 1884. It was during Smith's time that the hotel reached its heyday. Mr. John Stevens published the Sir Joseph Banks Polka, dedicated to Mr. and Mrs. Frank Smith, the proprietors of the pavilion at Botany.
In the 80s, St. Patrick's Day was celebrated with sports and a social gathering. On St. Patrick's Day in 1887, 15,000 people attended the various sports. A procession of about 700 proceeded from St. Benedict's Church. The different officers and members of the various societies were clad in the customary regalia. Events were high jump, collar and elbow wrestling, a 5-mile amateur bike race, a walking handicap, a mile foot race and a hurling match and tug of war.
Smith realised that foot racing would be a paying venture. 4 cinders tracks were laid down and a grandstand and dressing sheds were erected. From 1885 to 1890, professional sprint events boomed. The Banks track attracted runners from all over the world. Thousands would travel to Botany to witness world-class athletes.
Smith died in 1893, and despite his success with the hotel, his assets did not meet his debts. The property was repossessed by the bank, which operated the hotel with several different managers. From 1899 until 1908, Robert Marshall was the manager.
In 1908, the Sir Joseph Banks Estate Limited owned the property and renamed it the Olympic Recreation and Picnic Grounds. However, the hotel retained its name. When boxer Jack Johnson was preparing to fight Tommy Burns, his training camp was located there.
The hotel's name and license were transferred in 1917 to a new hotel on Botany Road. The old hotel building was condemned by the council in 1926, but remained standing and was sold in 1930 to James Rutley. It was owned by his family for many years. In the late 1990s, the property was sold, restored and converted into apartments.
Thomas Correy's Botany Tea Gardens, Picnic and Pleasure Grounds, adjacent to the Sir Joseph Banks Hotel, opened in 1866 on land leased from William Beaumont. Companies and associations regularly held their gatherings there.
Fire brigades held quarterly practices. In April 1869, members of the Insurance and Windsor Volunteer Fire Brigades, with wives and families, had a grand picnic at Mr. Correy's well-known beautiful and secluded gardens at Botany. The members of the fire brigade travelled on the engines and the ladies and children in omnibuses. 2 steam fire engines and 1 manual engine were taken out and the engines tested. The manual proved satisfactory, but superiority of steam over manual was exemplified.
In December 1873, a picnic to mark the goodwill and harmony existing in many of the large mercantile establishments was celebrated. The firm of D. Jones and Company arranged for 3 large 4-horse omnibuses to convey the party to Correy's Gardens. When the gardens were reached, very little time was lost in partaking of lunch.
Every year in November, on the Prince of Wales' birthday, the German Association held its annual picnic at Correy's Gardens.
In 1884, Corey transferred his business to Cabarita Point.
Today, the old Sir Joseph Banks Hotel in Anniversary Street remains an important Botany landmark and a reminder of that grand seaside resort of a former era. The adjoining Sir Joseph Banks Park has a life-size bronze statue of the botanist after which it was named. Statues of various animals around the park remind us of the zoo that was once located there.
If you have enjoyed this video, check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com.